Yes, hit record. So I think we are good to go, and very
Okay.
happy to introduce Kara Strawn, our Director of Program and Evaluation at the Community Foundation. She's put together a great presentation for you. So Kara, take it away.
Thank you, Allison and Jackie, and good afternoon to you all. It is a pleasure to be here with you again on this snowy Wednesday afternoon. As Allison said, I'm the Director of Program and Evaluation, and as part of my role, I oversee the Foundation's grant monitoring and evaluation process, which include many, many fun things, such as making sure all of our grantees' reports are in, reviewing those reports to take a look at the collective impact and learning that we gain from reviewing all of those reports, and really just doing also the fine-tuned work of reviewing the outcomes and for all of our applicants to our responsive process, amongst many other things. And so then I also do not do this work alone. There are a team of 3 of us. So special shout out to my colleagues, Hannah, Elias, and Luis Rodriguez, who also do all the grant monitoring, reporting, learning, and evaluation work. So with that brief introduction, I'm going to share my screen. Just give me one moment, please. Can everyone see that? Go ahead and make it
Yes,
bigger. Okay, wonderful.
perfect.
So just to do a really quick overview of what we'll cover today, we're going to do a little bit of context setting, not spend too long on that, but just want to sort of give you a sense of the way that the foundation thinks about learning and evaluation and outcome statements. Then we'll dive into a very useful tool for developing outcome measures and outcomes, which is the results-based accountability framework. We'll go over a different framework that talks about organizational outcomes, and then really get into the nitty-gritty of putting it all together. I think the reason why everyone is here around developing outcome statements. Then we'll go into breakout groups where you'll get an opportunity to work on some of your own. We'll come back for your Q&A and then conclude. So just diving right in, just really wanted to touch base and just talk about the foundation's philosophy around all things reporting and evaluation. So I'm sure, as you all can imagine, things really continue to evolve here in terms of the way that the foundation does its grant making practices. And for many, many years now, we've been doing general operating support grants, multi-year grants, really what I would say is ahead of the curve of trends in philanthropy. But a lot of this work picked up during COVID and the groundswell of support around supporting racial equity and social justice in 2020. And so since that time, we've continued to evolve our practices, looked at several different models of learning and evaluation and outcomes work. And that continues to, that is ongoing. So I would say stay tuned and continue to stay tuned, because we continue to evolve our practices to better serve the community. So within philanthropy, there really has been a shift in an adaptation of trust-based philanthropy. And as you see on the screen, there are really 6 key practices that underpin what trust-based philanthropy is. And one of those, multi-year support of grantees and unrestricted funding, which we can gladly say, check the box and say that we do. Really researching organizations and not relying on nonprofits to tell us the full story when there's work that can be done ourselves. Simplifying and streamlining paperwork, that whether it be applications or grant reports, being transparent and responsive, soliciting feedback, and providing like a full service of report. So it's more than just about handing out a grant check. Handing out a check or funding. It's about capacity building and relationship building. So in terms of trust-based philanthropy, there really are 3 key strategies that support the way that learning and evaluation work is done under trust-based philanthropy. One is learning for accountability, learning for decision-making, and learning for long-term impact. And we see this as a two-way street, right? So it's about learning for accountability, not just that of grantees and nonprofits, but for the accountability of the foundation. And the same thing goes for decision-making and long-term impact. We really see ourselves as partners in this work. And impact measurement really being an opportunity to learn about what is working, what's not working, what's needed. And again, that's on both ends. So when we talk about impact measurement, we really feel that results-based accountability is a great tool for developing those impact measurement metrics. And the foundation has been using results-based accountability, I would say, for over a decade. We do not have a tried and true, this is the way that you must do things, but we have really found this to be a useful way to think about this work. Results-based accountability really took off in 2005. A gentleman named Mark Friedman established the framework through his book, Trying Hard is Not Good Enough. And if you are interested in learning more about results-based accountability, you can visit the Clear Impact website, which has a range of resources and tools, and you can certifications around results-based accountability. But results-based accountability really is about starting at the end and asking what changes you want to see. What is the difference you want to make in those that you are serving? And it makes a distinction between looking at impact on a population level versus the client or target population level. I see that just to know if there are things in the chat or questions, I'm not able to pull them up. So Jack or Allison, if there's things, feel free to interrupt. So when we talk about population accountability, which is, again, this is communities, cities, counties, states, much larger than the world that any one of our entities or organizations could have a whole impact on. We're talking about the level of measurement around community indicators. So this is the type of work that organizations such as Data Haven or Connecticut Data Collaborative do. It's just looking at really a large scope of demographics, whereas performance accountability is looking at the sphere of influence in the target population of who you work with. Whether it be programs, your organization, agencies, service systems, it could be communities, but really looking at the specific work you do with the specific people you are working and interacting and serving, and asking, how much did we do? How well did we do it? And is anyone better off? And so results-based accountability, also called RBA, really breaks down measures into three key areas. It's about the quantity, the quality, and then that most important question, what is the difference made? Is anyone better off? So the quantity and quality is really about the numbers. It's the number of people you serve, the number of services, and then the quality, how well are you doing those things? When we talk about developing outcome measures, it really is about that third level of what the impact of your work is. And we think about those changes in four key areas. The first three are officially RBA. The fourth is one that we've added just through our years of doing this work. So it's changes in knowledge and skills, changes in attitudes and behaviors, changes in circumstances, and changes in systems and policy. And we will go through examples of each of these and give you all some time to interact with some of these. So I'll just go through this really quickly. Again, the changes in knowledge and skills, attitudes and behaviors, circumstances, and systems and policy. So when we're talking about or thinking about outcomes, the emphasis is always on the change or impact described using an action or verb. So using in this first bullet, students as an example, students improved math scores by 75%. The outcome is the improvement in math scores. with the second example, clients strengthen their understanding of their legal rights. Again, that strengthening of their understanding is that difference in the change in the knowledge and skills that occurred as a result of your work or efforts. And council members increased awareness of human trafficking. So if your outcome does not have that action verb within it and you can't really pinpoint it very easily, then that would be a sign or signal to really look at and see how you could retool that to communicate more effectively. So we'll move on to attitudes and behaviors, and I'll actually ask folks to just put in the chat to identify what the outcome is that is being honed in on. So clients reported feeling a greater sense of purpose. Can anyone in the chat, and Allison, I'm going to, or Jackie, I'm going to rely on you to help pinpoint or call out what folks are saying. Clients reported feeling a greater sense of purpose. What is the outcome there?
Greater sense of purpose.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
Improved healthy diets.
Yep.
Greater
Yes.
sense of purpose. Several times, lots of folks are promoting that.
Excellent. You guys got it. This is, yeah. Second bullet, an
Inspired to
increase.
design sustainable building.
Let me see if I can pull up the chats. I can say inspired
To design sustainable building.
building. I can see that. Right, because there's a change that in inspiration, right?
Right. But I think this is a good point where there's a lesson in here that had Alicia not used the inspired verb and just said, we design sustainable building, that wouldn't be an outcome.
Correct. Because I'm assuming here that the action is about education or increased awareness to a group to do this work, right? And you may not have the ability to or desire to even track how many designs were actually sustainable buildings were designed as a result. It sounds like, yes, education and outreach. Great. And then the last example, teens abstain from alcohol and cigarettes. I'm sure you guys got this. No one abstained. Yes. Thank you, Sharon. Okay, so we'll move on to change in behavior. Oops, sorry. No, okay, so changes in circumstances. Again, we can just run through these really quickly. Participants increased their wages. Clients maintained or improved their social supports. Mothers improved their credit scores. Residents became homeowners. Feel free to call out any of those in the chat in which you identify what the significant changes in circumstances or opportunities. And yes, well, actually, so we would say, yeah, increase wages, right? Making sure to include that verb. And I also want to add to that for the second bullet with this example, the maintained or improved social supports, that maintained is really, depending on your program, can be just as important. It isn't always about an increase of something or a decrease in something. Sometimes it is just about sustaining the work that you're doing. And so we absolutely honor that and recognize that as a significant outcome as well. Became homeowners, improved credit scores. Great. And so lastly, oh boy, sorry, the slides. Okay. So again, so with the last example, changes in policies and practice, this is the fourth layer that we really added on here. in terms of organizations that are more focused on advocacy work. And so the two examples, New Haven Public School Systems adopted new policies and practices, and 50 new small businesses signed on to the Paid Leave campaign. And so the change here, would be adopted new policies. Yes, yes, Jeff, maintain, because otherwise there might be declines. That's exactly right. So moving on, I just wanted to put this slide in is because this is another tool and way to think about developing outcomes and thinking about the difference made. And you'll see some of these as were listed in the previous slides, such as knowledge, awareness, skills, but also additional categories such as opportunity, motivation. And really, another way to start this work when you're setting out to develop your outcomes is what would you like to change and on whose part? So I'll pause here for a second because that really is the quick overview of RBA focused on target populations to see if there are any questions before we go into the organizational outcomes piece. Any questions? Okay. 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 So the organizational outcomes piece really came out of the work that we do and saw through our support of general operating grants. So we provide general operating flexible funding to nonprofits, and just over the time, over the course of years, looking at the RBA framework, recognizing that that framework really speaks to serving populations as opposed to the work of supporting whether it be the administrative aspects of an organization or organizational strength. So for this,
Kara,
we use another frame.
Kara,
Yes.
before we go on, there were a couple of questions that came up. So before you move on to the next
Oh, I
section,
see.
there were a couple of questions that got typed into the chat. Is
Okay.
objective the same as outcome?
No, an objective is not the same as an outcome. As an objective, I would put more in the goal category, where it's the overarching direction in which you want to move, whereas the outcome is the specific change in circumstance that you can tie back to an activity, whereas the outcome speaks to the overall goals of an entire program or intervention. Can target populations ever be identical with whole populations? Yes, I think so, especially when you're talking about if your organization does work that really is at a larger population level. I'm thinking about organizations such as like maybe community newspapers or radio. But yes, I think they can be used interchangeably, and there is a lot of nuance to this, to all of this stuff. I should note that there are no hard and fast rules. Definitely more art than science. So yes, I would say that it just depends on the type of work that you do. Okay. Okay, so moving on to our organizational outcomes. The framework that we use to develop or support our work in this area comes from the TCC group. So I encourage you to, if you want to know more about developing outcomes that support general operating, flexible dollars, organizational outcomes, to check them out as a resource. The three categories that we pull from that framework are program effectiveness, so changes in program effectiveness, changes in organizational development, and changes in system strength. And we'll go through some quick examples of that. So some examples of program effectiveness: improved program quality, increased programming, launch of new program or innovative programming, reduced program cost, or program expansion. I see there's a question about TCC group. Jackie, are you able to speak on TCC group really quickly?
Sure. I'm not sure what the question is about the TCC group. TCC Group is a company based out of New York, and they have a Chicago office. They do organizational assessments, and offering what we do often here is offer the CCAT program, the Core Capacity Assessment Tool, that is part of the TCC Group. They do other things, but that's the tool that we utilize and offer to folks through our consultant support program. And they can help you understand what your organizational challenges are. They don't really work on the outcome side. They work on the internal side of building strength within your organization. It's not for programming, it's for internal strength. Oh, Kara, did you reference TCC or did that?
Yes, I did. So it was the organizational impact. This framework comes from TCC's work. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move through these quickly, just in terms of program effectiveness and that action and the action word or change verb, improved program quality, increased programming. I think you guys got that. Got that down. As far as organizational development, we have improved capacity through activities such as fundraising, infrastructure, finance, knowledge, management, and evaluation. I would say that this is honestly one of the main outcomes we see with a lot of our applicants and grantees. A lot of the work that's supporting the general operating support goes to, in terms of organizational outcomes, really falls into this category. Some other examples are improved staffing or volunteer effectiveness or skills. A lot of work around supporting strategic plans, increased financial stability, and program expansion. And then lastly, the last category is around system strength. So it's less about the focus internally in your organizational strength, but externally, how are you advancing the work to your organization's work and connections within the larger sector that it works in. So whether that's improved strategic alliances and partnerships, organization leadership, expanding from internal field to field leadership, greater adaptability and nimbleness, strengthen field networks and field cohesion, enhance senior capacity, which also definitely falls into the org development category, and improvements in overall capacity. So these are just some examples. And again, they don't necessarily fit neatly into one of these categories, but it's just a way to get you to think about developing organizational outcomes. Okay, so we've reviewed many categories of outcomes, and I will pause again before we go into the next section in terms of putting this all together. Would succession planning fall into system strength? I would say absolutely. Oh, into system strength. I would say that's mostly focused on organizational development and strength. But you could make the connection to the larger system if it's about making sure an organization is sustainable so that it remains connected to a larger ecosystem.
Folks, if you have a question, you can unmute and ask the question or drop it into the chat while we break here.
I have a question, Jackie.
Right ahead.
So I was the one who asked the difference between objective and outcome. So in our proposal, under objective, it's 3 sentences basically, and I'm gonna read quickly. Our objective is to create academic or vocational housing facilities to provide safe and clean environments during the client's recovery in our program. Our target population is, of course, the homeless and former incarcerated people. Then under that, it says to guide former inmates and homeless individuals into a new way of thinking, behavior as they move from deficiency to self-sufficiency, empower our clients to become independent, self-sustained, and responsible individuals. That's not clear of an outcome, is it?
No. So what you would do with those objectives, right? So that objective is like the larger picture where you want to go. You would take that objective and break that down, or those objectives, break those down into smaller bites, where you would have a specific, you would name the group, the specific outcome measure that would connect to that, roll up to that larger objective.
Got you. So then would be, I put move homeless population into safe housing, reduce
Yes,
financial
that would be,
insecurity, increase health and human services to reduce trauma-related experiences.
yeah. So I heard 3 to 4 outcomes in that, what you just listed.
So those are outcomes then.
Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Listed separately.
And I think
And
that will
so,
become clearer when we get later into the conversation.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so that was actually a really great tee up to where we're moving to with all of this information. So here we have outcomes, what we've just spent our time talking about, those specific changes, being very specific, right, in those that you want to serve in the conditions in the environment. The outcome measure being what data point you plan to collect to assess what that outcome is. Most of the times that's demonstrated through percentages or numbers, but typically percentages is the easiest way to communicate that change in outcome circumstance. So you would take your outcomes, your outcome measures, and roll those up into an outcome statement, which describes the target group you'll experience, speaks to what the activities are that support that outcome, and sorry, I'm jumbling that up a bit, but talks about the target population, the difference that you would like to see, the outcome, and the activities that would support it. So that might sound confusing, but I'm going to move to our grid, which really breaks this down quite well. And I just want to say too that depending on who your audience is for a grant application or a proposal or whatever you're working on, there are some funders that might be looking for outcomes. There are some funders that might be looking for outcome measures. There are some that might be looking for outcome statements. So really just keeping that in mind that all of these tools can be used differently for different audiences. For us, we've really evolved to looking at outcome statements because they just kind of wrap all of the information up into one sentence as is demonstrated here. But by all means, these can be broken down into the various components. So outcome statements involve the who or what, who's the target subject, describes the change, going back to that action word, your outcome, the degree of change, which for us is often optional, but you see that percent. So the degree of change is also the outcome measure, and the activities are intervention that support that outcome. So the first example, high schoolers will improve their leadership skills through mentorship programming. You can see all 3 of the key components in that outcome statement. The second example, low-income families will increase their use of supportive services by 25% through referrals to local organizations. So again, just want to iterate that degree of change is not something we necessarily would include in a final outcome for our grantees, but you are definitely encouraged to think about and use that in various iterations of your grant proposals and work. And then the last two examples are less about target populations and more community work and advocacy. So community gardens will have reduced sewer contamination through the implementation of a waste management plan. And the paid leave campaign will receive additional small business sign-ons through outreach activities. And then just really quickly, so I also included some examples of organizational outcomes, which include strengthening a programmatic focus through the development of a strategic plan, increasing a donor base as a result of the launch of a fundraising campaign, and increasing financial stability through the adoption of new accounting software. So I'll pause again to see if there are any questions on this framework, because this is really what we're going to use to go into breakout groups and do some group thinking around developing outcomes.
I have a question.
Yes.
So for the degree of change, for what we're trying to do, I think it's really important that we can show some statistics on the change. What we have, I'm not certain if it's appropriate, but one is to lower the arrest rates of our target population, reincarceration rates, and reduce emergency room visits. Those can be measured.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said thank you.
Okay. Yes, I mean, I would encourage you to include those elements in your outcome statements. And I will say this is sort of kind of a behind the scenes FYI. We often have taken out the degree of change when we finalize outcomes with grantees, because we often don't want to penalize folks if they aren't able to meet a specific threshold, right? So if your goal is by 10% and say you get to 9%, it's not that your organization or the program has failed or done something wrong. And so we've historically, while we encourage you to use those metrics because it helps inform you, it helps inform us, in finalized outcomes that would be agreed upon, should an organization receive funding, we would typically remove those. That's a little bit of context in terms of that. Okay. Okay, if there are no further questions, we can tee up to start getting into breakout groups. And so in advance of the session, I know Allison sent out the form which has these examples of the two grids, the programmatic target population grid, the organizational outcomes grid, and then a blank grid. And so what we'd do is just in maybe for the next 10 minutes, have folks break up into groups and work on developing outcomes.
Kara, can you see the chat? There's a question from Jeff before we go into breakouts. Is it proper to compare the results for clients who participate into the larger target population who did not participate in the activities, rather than change in the specific clients who participated?
Yes, I actually think that's a really good question. I would say yes. And we do see not actually that many of those types of outcomes, but I think those are always helpful if you are able to connect the difference that your program has made or the outcomes within your target population as compared to a benchmark or a larger group. So Jeff, that's actually, I'm going to think about how to incorporate examples that include that for the next iteration of this PowerPoint. Thank you.
So I just dropped the developing outcomes handout into the chat. So everyone has access to it right now before I send you off into your breakout room. So if you want to download it, if you didn't already, you can have it at your fingertips as I send you up. We're going to create about 10 breakout rooms. So there'll be groups of about 5 people. And I'm sending you on your way now.
Outcome statement development. So I was checking in with some of the folks that joined back into the main room first, whether they thought 10 minutes was enough time, and it sounds like probably could have used about 15 minutes. We have time to close out with some Q&A, but I understand, Jackie, you were in the middle of giving an example of an outcome in the group that you were, or outcome statement in the group that you were in. Oh, you're on mute.
Actually, not an outcome statement, but we were talking about how do you measure your outcomes. And sometimes things are, you know, not as cut and dried as the attendance and how many people participated, how many meals did you serve. So when you're trying to develop, what are those questions that you ask in a survey? Like if you have to do a survey, pre and a post survey, evaluation can't be an afterthought because you have to do the pre-survey. So you have to build that in up front, and that's what we're looking for in the application, that you've given it that thought. And if you're going to ask questions, I don't know the person who was asking that. I don't know what organization they're from. You really have to go back to your mission. That's what you're all about. What is it that you're trying to accomplish in the world? Then what is it that you're trying, what are your objectives for and goals for this particular application? And then ask questions that relate to that. So if you're an arts organization and you're saying that we build the quality of life and we give students hope, and or you know, if you're a youth service organization, we give students hope, we put them on the right path, they stay in school. Ask the questions that relate to those things. Do you feel better after seeing this exhibit? Do you feel better after attending this performance? How has this changed you? People come up with great sound bites. Ask them questions for the sound bites that you want to get back.
Thank you. Wanted to check in to see if there were other questions or reflections on that really quick exercise. Guilford Arts, yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a question. To Jackie's point, what you were just talking about. So the grids that we were working off of, I mean, this had nothing to do with outcome measures, right? This was just, right? It doesn't really have to do with, it had to do with who are we trying to affect? How are we going to do it? What would be optionally, what would the degree of change be? And how are we going to do it? The whole thing about measuring the outcomes, surveying, that's not part of what we're looking at today, right? Or am I crazy?
No, I mean, so that is our perspective, but I think it's like, how deep do you want to go, right? So it could be if your emphasis and you really want to hone in on those measurements today, then absolutely yes. this is sort of providing the range of what we generally see and look for in,
And I've certainly taken, okay, I've certainly taken I've filled out the application many times and you guys have been so generous towards us. I haven't looked at the application for this time, but I'm anticipating that there are questions on there about the about outcome measures. Right?
So the questions are around develop your outcome statements. And it's an ask, I can't remember the number now. I think 1 to 3 around your target population and 1 to 3 around your organizational outcomes.
Okay.
And then there's a question around how do you measure the effectiveness of your programs, which would,
Mm-hmm.
2 parts, which would speak to whether it's surveys, whether it's a data system where you could really expand on
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Are there other questions?
Hi, this is Wendy from St. Martin de Porres in New Haven. My question is about like how fine do you make your outcomes? Do you talk like high level that you say for us, for example, you support, high school and college students through your graduate support program so they can graduate on time or with the least debt or whatever? Or do you go finer than that and say that your target is a high school student and the change is they participate in more clubs and activities or something like that? Like, how finely do you make your outcomes if you have a lot of things that you do in your program? Do you talk about it at the high level, or do you try to just like how do you deal with that?
Yeah. I would say when you're trying to talk about a lot of things in one statement, to really think about what are those outcomes that really speak to the highest level of impact, right? So you can talk about club participation and parent engagement, but if you had to choose 1 or 2 things that really speak to the impact of your program, what would those things be, and how, and I would roll those into 1 or 2 or 3 outcomes. I know it's really challenging when you do so many things.
So I'm thinking what kind of, I could be missing it, is the why. So it's like if we were to say like a goal is to get more students to go away to college. The why is because we found they're more successful when they're removed from their neighborhoods, which tells part of the story of like, so you can say that your activity is to get them to, your goal is to get them to go away to college, but how do you do it so that the why's in there? Like, cause like that could seem like, or that we say we want our kids will do so many co-curriculars or go on trips because low-income children don't have those same learning opportunities or life experiences. Like that sort of why's missing. And it just might seem like sending kids on trips is a kind of a waste of money thing without the why. Like, so how do you, that kind of thing?
So the why is what's included in your application, right? Like when we ask about like what the need is, that's where you would address that. And it's assumed that the grant reviewer, the staff person that is looking at that application, not assumed, that person is taking all of that information in and considering all of those things when looking at your application. And on the tail end, the folks that are reading the report are bringing that knowledge to how they analyze all of the data and grant reporting. So you don't need to include the why. Yes, you include the why in your application, but not in the development of your outcome statements. Are there any other questions?
I have 1 or 2. This is Alicia, with Build Green CT. This has been so helpful and honestly has answered, I'm going to call them existential questions that I've had about the work that Build Green CT does. Again, starting with some of the things we do are almost feel impossible to measure. So those examples were really helpful. I think also the organizational, the policy examples were so illuminating because that policy and advocacy is some of the work that my organization does. I thought also the organizational examples were really helpful because, and I was playing around with one during our breakout room. We're a membership organization, and the degree to which we're able to like stabilize or expand membership is really critical to our financial stability. And I was like in the breakout section, actually beginning to see that we maybe an example for us would be that we would increase our financial stability through, say, the launch of a membership renewal campaign. And I was like, is that am I going in the right direction?
Yes, that sounds
Okay.
like a great outcome statement.
Okay, phew.
You
'Cause
got,
I
yeah.
like
You
I didn't
nailed
get a
it.
chance to ask that in our breakout, but that is something that I probably keeps me, if something keeps me up at night and it's not the planet or other existential things of the organization, that's it, like how do I wrestle membership? So thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That was really helpful feedback to hear. I know we have a minute left. I just wanted to put in a plug. So I am happy to discuss your specific outcomes and questions following this webinar. We will send out the slides and all the correct contact information. But this is sort of the season of outcome measures, office hours. So please reach out as you're working on your grant applications. I'm happy to review outcomes. I can look at things and track changes, send back thoughts, suggestions, hop on the phone. So any questions that come up, whether it's outcomes related to the Community Foundation's grant process or any others that you might be working on, please feel free to reach out. We can continue the conversation.
Thank you all. Thank you, Kara. Kara, we lost you?
No, I'm here. I just saw
Okay.
there's a question about open grants. That might be one to good one to plug.
Which grant
Okay.
open? So right now, our small grant process is open. That's for organizations with operating budgets under $2 million. There are two different types of applications. There's a smaller, what we call our builder grant this year. If your operating budget is $40,000 or less, you can come in for a builder grant. That grant is up to $5,000 in cash. Plus, you get the opportunity to work with a consultant that we supply to you to help build the infrastructure of your organization to make it stronger. If your organization is over $40,000, you can apply for up to 15 in either program support, capacity building support, or general operating support. So if you're between 2 million and 40,000, you can come in for a small grant. Those small grants are once every other year. So if you got one last year, you're not eligible this year. And if you get one this year, then you're not eligible next year. But it's a great way to come into the Community Foundation. If you've never been to us before, it's a great way for us to get to know who you are and how you operate and how you work. And it's a good chance to get some funding that can turn around faster. The small grant, you usually get an answer with under 2 months for a small grant request. The other process that's open right now is the responsive grant process. That is our multi-year process. This is for organizations with operating budgets of $100,000 or more. And you can request up to $50,000 per year for 3 years. It's quite an extensive application, and it also requires a Give Greater profile, not the Great Give, but Give Greater profile to be completed as part of the application. You will not get an answer on that until July, because that is a much longer process. If we're going to be investing 3 years, then heavier investment, then we do more due diligence than we do with some of the smaller grants. And it takes a longer time, and we present it all to our board, who make the ultimate decisions in July. So those two processes are open at this time. Take a look at, and Allison, if you can go to the grants to apply for page. I'm going to ask Allison to drop into the chat the link to talk about all of our grant programs, because other things will be opening up. We have an Emerging Leaders of Color program. It is mostly about the personal development and professional development of a mid-management person who aspires to be an executive director, but it does come with a grant. So there's an opportunity for that. Kara, do you want to tell anything about basic needs and women and girls?
Sure. So the Fund for Women and Girls Grant RFP will be posted to our website on March 3rd. And the close date for that is March 31st. The eligibility criteria will be posted at that point, but it's most likely, not most likely, we'll be supporting women's economic security in the areas of workforce participation, workforce readiness, entrepreneurship, childcare innovation. So stay tuned for that if you're an organization that's working with women. And basic needs, that seems like a long ways away at this point, but so that grant opportunity will become available September, I want to say the 8th, that first Monday in September following Labor Day, and we'll close the first Monday in October. And those grants go to support basic needs, clothing, shelter, food insecurity. So more information will be going, we'll go out about that in the summer or early fall.
While we still have some folks here, we also have two other programs. We have the sponsorship program. So if you're doing a fundraising one-day event, not about program, but about fundraising and or a community event that's out in the community, you can apply for a sponsorship. Those applications are online, open until we run out of money. And we also have the consultant support program. So if you have not gotten one of those this year, you can come in. That's something you can do every year. It is a small, discrete project that you would like to work with a consultant on, not to build program, but to build infrastructure. And it's about capacity building. So if you want to have someone come in, talk to your board, do some board development work, you want to tweak your website, or you want to create a fund development plan, or get started on a strategic plan, or do some organizational development work, we can help you we can pay for you to work with a consultant, up to about $2,000, $2,500 worth of time with a consultant. And we have a list of consultants that works with the program all the time. So if you have an idea, we can match you with someone, give you some suggestions as to who to work with, or you can work with a consultant you have on your own. And we pay the consultant directly to do the work with you. It's a pretty simple application. We ask 2 questions. What are you going to do, and what do you hope to get out of it? And then there's a really short, what did you set out to do? Did you do it? How did it work out for you? And what more do you need is the report that happens when you're done with it. So consultant support, you can reach out to Allison or our colleague Stephanie Chung to talk to them about the consultant support program. It is not online because we like to have a conversation with that. You can't use it as part of a larger plan. So if you're doing a $15,000 strategic plan and you're looking for 2,000 more, this is not for you. This is for a project that may go up to $3,000, $5,000. You may be doing some work internally on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. You may have a commitment to do that, but need just a little bit more money to make it happen. That we can do for you if the project is up to 5,000. So those are 2 other programs that are open. Anything
I
else?
did drop the link to the website where we list all of those opportunities, and I will email it out to everyone when I send the slide deck from today and the handout in a little bit.
Okay, so we are a little past time. And if there are more questions, you're welcome to stay on and ask, but well, thank you very much for making the time today. Thank you, Kara, for the great presentation. I always say, I said last year when I saw this presentation, that slide with the color coding of the outcomes, that was what I call the money slide. That's what it's all about. So when you're crafting your application, we ask you for outcomes, pull that slide up, have it next to you. That's what we want to see when you create your outcome in your grant. So thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just hanging around y'all because I have a question.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't really able to have enough time in my breakout room to share any of my outcomes. And I just want some professional advice, if that's okay.
Kara,
So,
do you have a minute to stay on to do that?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We want to stop, maybe we
Yeah,
end
we
the
can
recording.
stop.